Welcome to The Bottom Line. This is Maya, your host. We're going to talk all about money. I'm going to edutain you today.
So what does that mean, edutain?
So edutain is a phrase that was coined that's educate and entertain and put together. And I think on a subject, obviously money is interesting, but since I own a bookkeeping firm and we're talking about taxes, bookkeeping, accounting, some of those things get really boring.
Yeah.
And so I have to make them entertaining and make people want to hear about it and, tell them jokes and tell them mistakes that people have made and things like that so that it's actually something they want to hear about. So we're just going to call it edutainment.
I like it. I've actually never heard that word before, so
I'm not
clever.
the one that made it up. One of my friends who does, the reels for me, she made it up, but I loved it and I just own it. I've now made it part of my personality.
It works.
It's edutainment.
So let me ask you a question. I want you to tell me about your background because I know you do accounting, you do bookkeeping, right?
Yeah, bookkeeping.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your business, your background, how you got into this field.
Yeah, so it's interesting and not interesting at the same time. I kind of got out of high school and needed something to do. I was kind of not shy, but not confident. I was 18. I didn't really have skills. I didn't really know what I should be doing. I actually moved with a guy at the time when I was 18. I ended up moving to a little island north of Seattle and working for his mom as the office manager. And I did billing and stuff like that for her. So that's kind of how I got introduced into bookkeeping, and I did invoicing and all kinds of stuff, receipts, filing, whatever, like 18-year-old office manager, small landscape construction type of company. And
did you get like a lot of like people unsure about you because you were so young?
No, the funny thing is I've always looked pretty young. So I think when I was 18, I probably looked 14 or 15. But I always worked for small businesses. So you're just looking for help. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm trusting you with these $1 million processes. It's like, oh, hey, can you send out the invoices to the client? It was this was landscaping. I'm not going to say what year it was, but it was a long time ago. So it was like a $45 invoice for mowing the guy's lawn. Nobody thought that I could mess that up. Maybe I did. I don't remember, but it was pretty simple stuff. So I just sent out invoices. And then I grew up a lot of places. I've talked about this, but I was born in Israel. Then when I was about 5 or 6, my family moved to a little town south of London. And I went to primary school there and learned about kings and queens instead of presidents. And I was there until I was about 10. Then I moved here to Clearwater.
So did you get a British accent?
100%. Because I always wanted to fit in. Not anymore. Now I'm like, I want to stand out. But as a kid, I wanted to fit in. So I lost my Hebrew accent. I learned English. And I sounded like a little British girl.
Can you still do the British accent?
I feel like I can do it better than other people, but not like it's not real anymore. Because then as soon as I moved to Florida, I worked really hard because all the little kids made fun of me for past the salt.
Right.
And they were like, oh, the salt, the water, whatever. So whatever. But I can do accents.
It's almost like a mixture of like New York with British.
I'm doing it wrong. I can do it, but I have friends from when I lived in England, and they're like, "Yeah, your British accent isn't bad," but I lost it. So any British accent that I do is fake, but I can do it. Like I can be like the water and stupid, and you go to the loo, whatever. But the British accent's not my best accent. My better accents are actually like Southern American or like New York or Actually, my favorite accent that I try all the time, which people think I'm crazy for because apparently it's considered an ugly accent, but I love Boston accent.
Oh, yeah.
Like if I could marry a guy with a Boston accent, I would be so happy.
It's a very unique one.
I love it so much.
Recently I was talking to someone from Pennsylvania. It's quite similar.
No.
I feel like it is. Maybe he's like on the...
Wait, like Philly.
I don't know exactly where he's from in Pennsylvania.
I feel like
Philly is quite different, but he told me, I didn't ask him what city he was from, but I almost was in my mind doubting if he was from Massachusetts, you know?
I think they sound more like Jersey.
Okay.
Like they remind me of Jersey
Yeah, I
Shore.
could see that.
Yeah. But like Boston is like they did that one commercial, all those Boston actors with the car. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
I love it so much. But like I parked the car at Harvard Yard. Like people taught me how to say in Harvard Yard. Yeah, and the Todd part of Harvard Yard. You know, so it's like my favorite accent, even though it's considered gross. Like Mark Wahlberg and like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, like when they do the accent, I'm just like, Anyways, okay. So then I was in England, moved to Florida, lost my British accent like instantaneously, and then now I just sound American. So yeah, so then at 18 I moved to LA because I was like, I'm bored of Clearwater because it's a boring town, but it's great when you're older and you're busy and all your friends are here. But as a teenager, it sucks. Moved to LA, met a guy in LA, and he was like, and I just moved there, so I didn't have really anything going for me. And he's like, do you want to move to a little island north of Seattle? And I was like, okay. And then I moved to this tiny island that's even more boring than Clearwater.
Really?
Yes. Like he would ask me what I wanted to do on the weekend. And he would be like, oh my gosh, I think this is making me cry. It was so boring. He was like, okay. And he was this Seattle kind of northwestern outdoors guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, so do you want to go kayaking, canoeing, or hiking? And little 18-year-old me was like, I want to go to the mall. And the mall is 2 hours away, plus a ferry ride. So I lived there for a few years, even after we broke up, because they were kind of like family to me at that point, and I was working for his mom. Then I eventually moved back to LA, and I had experience in, as an office manager. So I got, and it was kind of like, do you want to be the receptionist or do you want to be the accounts receivable assistant or something? And the accounts receivable assistant made like $2 more an hour. So I was like, give me that. And then I just started making that like my career path. I was like the accounting assistant, the finance manager, blah, 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 blah. Eventually I was the CFO of a marketing company for a couple of years just because I'd gotten so much experience because I never went to school for it. And I started doing, bookkeeping clients on the side. And then the guy that I was the CFO for, he's still a really good friend of mine. And he was kind of like, it's probably time for you to go do your own business. And I was like, yeah. And so we're still really good friends. Like I go to his and his wife's birthday parties, so it was like no hard feelings, no animosity, just it wasn't a good fit anymore. So I started my own company, and that was in 2018. And I had so much experience by that point that it wasn't even hard to get clients. Like I think about this now, like bookkeepers start and they're like, how do you get clients? And I'm like, how do you not get clients? Like if you are a good bookkeeper, it's such a needed thing.
It's really hard, like accountants, bookkeepers, it's really hard to get in communication with them.
Yes.
And one thing that I noticed when I first met you, you were so easy to talk to.
Thank you. I love that.
That stood out to me. And I think that's a really good quality. I would even think that has a lot to do with why you're so successful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is I really appreciate you saying that, but I also think it's a really good point because a lot of people get into accounting and bookkeeping so they don't have to talk to people because they just can do numbers. My sister has a bookkeeping firm and she hates talking to people. And she does it as least as possible. And she doesn't want more clients. She just wants enough to keep her busy and stuff like that. And, every once in a while, if she runs into something she has to sort out with a client, she will ask me to help. And she'll be like, okay, I wrote the email. Can you look at it? And sometimes I'm like, why don't you just call them? She's like, no. So yeah, it's a really good point. I love talking to people. I love people. I love helping people. The funny thing is like, my sister and I, we have the same family, but my dad is actually a fundraiser. So being around him, he always would, as a kid, as a young, teenager or whatever, he would take me to charity events and all this stuff. I have an eyelash falling in my face. This is what happens when you get eyelash extensions, kids. They like to fall in your face. Okay. So he would take me to these, fundraising events and charity balls and things like that, and just introduce me to people and make me talk to people. And I would be around him, and, I'd hang out in his office, and he would be doing fundraising. So it's like sales, but it's honestly even harder than sales because you're selling an idea. You're asking for donations. And my dad is a top fundraiser, for the organization where he works at. And he's just going around asking people for hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to pay for social betterment things and, whatever. And so I really kind of, and my dad was like my best friend. So even more than my sister, who wasn't as exposed to that, I was around that. And so like I remember, and then as a young teenager, I was like a 13, 14, 15-year-old, he would hand me a clipboard and be like, go talk to people and ask them for money. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I remember one time, obviously many years ago, because whatever, I walked around and they told me my instructions were ask everybody you see for a $2,000 donation. And I had no
So
concept
how
of
old
money.
were you at this time?
I think 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had no concept of money. I keep hitting this mic that I'm not used to.
I think the first time I asked somebody for $2,000, I was already in my 20s.
Yeah. No concept of the value of $2,000. I was just like, okay. And they're like, you never know. Maybe someone will give it to you. And I didn't care either way. I had no concern. It didn't matter. I was just helping him out. So, he's busy. He's trying to keep me busy. And I started walking around and going, hi, so for the fundraiser, for the charity thing we're doing tonight, we're asking everyone for $2,000. And I'm just like this cute, like innocent, whatever girl. And some people they were like, well, I'll give you $100. And I was like, okay. And I had him fill out the form. One guy was like, okay. And he gave me $2,000. And I was like, woo, 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 woo. And everyone freaked out but it really gave me a lot of lessons of like, if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. What if I would have asked him for 10,000?
Isn't that crazy? I think that a lot of times people, if they just asked for the quantity that they have in their mind, they would be surprised how many times you actually get it.
It's true. It's true. And it's crazy. It really, so not that I ever wanted to do sales, but I just had like that flavor or background. If somebody, my career was, bookkeeping. So if somebody would have been like, go sell landscaping, I would have been like, no way. Like, not. Can I swear on my show?
You can do whatever you want.
Oh, good. I would have been like, fuck that. No, I'm not doing sales. Sales is terrible. But I'm actually pretty good at it when it's something I care about. So when and I tell this to people all the time, like just as a kind of stable datum, right? There are people who know less than you, who aren't as good as you, doing what you want to be doing just because they're asking for money or they're talking to people. And
making more, right?
Making more money than you.
Yeah.
And they're not better than you, and they're not smarter than you, and they're not more skilled than you. They're just asking, they're making more money than you because they are, putting themselves out there and they're asking for money. So it kind of gives you like the, oh shit, because I'm sure there's like accountants and business owners or whatever that are amazing at what they do. And they just like feel uncomfortable to talk to people. And it's not like I don't feel uncomfortable talking to people. My sister and I we went to a New Year's party one time and we didn't know a lot of people. And she was like, I'm not like you. I can't just go and talk to people and just, with no effort. And I was like, do you think that it's no effort for me? Like there are people that I know that it's no effort for because I've talked to them and they're just like, yeah, no effort, talk to people. But I am not one of those. Like if I don't know anybody, that is awkward as fuck. But I do that thing where I go, ugh, and I just go talk to someone. Like I like push myself. And then I just put a smile on my face and I go, hi, I'm Maya. How are you? Or like, nice to meet you. Who are you? What do you do? Tell me about yourself. Even if I make a fool out of myself, maybe I'm a charming fool. I don't know. I try, or I go up to someone having a conversation and I try to chime in or whatever, however you do it, right? But it's like, and some people probably don't like me and think I'm weird or I'm crazy or I'm awkward. And some people are like, this is my person, so it's like you just talk to people. So it's not about not being scared to do things. This is really like the things that I keep in mind. Being brave is not about not being scared. It's about doing things even though you're scared. Even though it's scary, you just do it anyways. Like, do I love the idea of doing a podcast and just like talking about myself all day long? Like, not really. I'm a bookkeeper. I own a bookkeeping firm. It is tax season. I should be helping my bookkeepers and doing bookkeeping reviews right now. And instead, I'm sitting here talking to you about myself. Okay, fine.
But let me ask you, so how often do you run into a situation where you're like, you take over the books of a company and it's just like a disaster? Like you have to do tremendous cleanup. And then, alternately, how often does it occur that you walk in and it's like in order, it's super clean?
A majority of the time, it's a disaster, like terrible. I would say probably at least 90% of the time. And it makes sense though, because if it wasn't a disaster and it wasn't terrible, why would they need a bookkeeper?
I think that a lot of people just financially are just not educated.
Yeah. Financial education is so lacking in the US. There's memes about that. Like, oh, I wish I learned taxes in school. But also, the truth of the matter is that if you would have learned taxes in school, it would have been pointless because they're different now. They change. I honestly think that the US government is in like cahoots with the IRS and accountants of like, let's keep this really complicated so no one understands it. There's basic stable data in it, but it is so complicated that you need to be an expert. You don't like, if you're an expert in taxes, you almost don't have enough brain power to be an expert in like other things too, because it changes every year. You have to keep up with it. Not only do taxes change and tax laws, there are new things and industries that you have to keep up with. Like you've been an accountant for 20 years and now people are like, hey, how do you do taxes for crypto? I don't fucking know. I mean, I don't do taxes, so to me, it doesn't matter. I'm just like, tell me what your value was at the beginning, tell me what is the end, and the CPA does the rest. But like, imagine you're a CPA that's been doing this every year, and now people are like crypto, and you're like, what?
So I imagine in cases like that, they have to spend some time researching and learning the laws for that particular subject or industry.
Yeah, or they don't, and they just say, I don't do crypto accounting.
That's easy enough.
Yeah, and depending if they have enough clients and they're not gonna grow and learn, which a lot of CPAs and accountants, like you said, they're just, in their little box. They don't really want to talk to people. It takes 2 to 3 weeks to hear back from your bookkeeper or your CPA. So they just don't. And then they tell you, oh, I don't like that new software. I just want to stick to the one I've been using for 15 years. And then business owners tell me, well, my CPA doesn't like QuickBooks Online. And I'm like, of course he doesn't, because he's been doing accounting since he was 20 and now he's 65 and he doesn't want to switch programs. He's used to it.
What are some of the other programs that you run into?
Well, a lot of people, QuickBooks is like the top program that's used, software.
But they're just not on the online version.
Right. They're on desktop.
Yeah.
And honestly, QuickBooks is trying to get rid of desktop.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've run into that myself.
Yeah.
I had a client that I used to do IT for,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things he wanted to do was set up like an old school network with QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to find the CDs.
Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can buy the CDs anymore. You have to download the program, and now they're charging an annual subscription, and they're raising the prices. They're really trying to sunset it.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get rid of it. And switch everyone to online. It's about to be more expensive than QuickBooks Online, so it makes sense. But
I can see a benefit in that as well, because if you have a bug, it's so much easier to just push it to a live server that everyone automatically gets the update versus having a printed CD that you're basically screwed. If there's a bug in the code, there's nothing they can do until you buy the next CD.
I love that you're looking at it that way from like an IT perspective. I'm pretty sure Intuit QuickBooks is looking at it from a money perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's people who had that CD that they bought in 2006 and they had it until 2016 when it just no longer worked and they didn't make any more money on it.
Right.
As opposed to the QuickBooks Online that people are paying at least $25 a month.
Right. And part of that is that just in general, the world has moved to a subscription model in a lot of things. Renting is just become the thing. People don't buy things anymore. They rent them, they lease
Yeah.
them. So that was inevitable with software too.
And it makes more sense too, because if you have to have people on staff to be support for this, CD that they bought 10 years ago, they're not getting paid and you still have to have them on staff and pay them to support.
Right.
And you're not making any more money. So,
But
yeah.
let's fast forward to, let's say, the last 3 or 4 years, right? So
Mhm.
you have your business Solvency now.
Yeah.
So where are you guys at? What have you accomplished as a business?
It depends how you look at it. I've accomplished a lot, but there's a lot I still want to accomplish. And I have about 150 companies that we do bookkeeping for. So I have, not that I really like look at all of their books every day because they each have a bookkeeper assigned to them, but I think it's about 100 million of revenue that I am
You're
managing.
managing it.
Yeah. So, but
That's impressive.
it's a big number, right? It sounds
It
really
is.
cool. So I know someone asked me one time and I went and calculated and I was like, yeah, for I haven't calculated 2023 yet because we're still closing out the books, but for 2022 it was almost 100 million.
So what does that look like? I mean, in terms of, obviously you don't need to get into the ins and outs of your business, but what kind of clients are you dealing with? Is it like real estate investors? Is it
I've got a bunch of real estate investors and I love those guys because they actually have really simple books. So I'm like, give me more real estate investors.
interesting?
It's complicated, but it's low volume of transactions.
I
So
could see that.
we have a lot of, and I've actually done podcasts with real estate investing, professionals, and then they give me more real estate investors and stuff. So love those guys. But I want to go back to answer the question that you asked me because I went off topic. So basically, I have all these companies' books that I can look at that I can compare myself to. And that's a blessing and a curse because you really shouldn't compare yourself to other people. You should compare yourself, to am I doing better than I was yesterday? Or am I doing better or worse than I was yesterday? So I try really hard not to compare myself to them. But I have some companies that started 2 years ago and they're making $9 million now revenue. And there's some companies that have been around for 10 years and they're still staying at their 500,000 revenue. So I also have enough to look at to know that it doesn't fucking matter and that I can't compare myself to any of them because I'm different. My experiences are different. My knowledge is different. My goals are different. So I just go, great, let's do better than I did the year before. And on average, I've had about a 60% increase each year, which is awesome. Since I started in 2018, it's been a lot to learn and figure out, right? Like I started as a bookkeeper. I was not a business person. I just, like any other entrepreneur, thought I could do it better than everybody else. And there's a lot that I do better than everybody else, like bookkeeping. But these business owners that annoyed the shit out of me because they didn't know anything about accounting and bookkeeping and finances, which is most businesses, which were telling me what to do as their accounting manager or whatever, which is why I was like, I'm going to go start my own thing. Now, as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, now that I've been doing this, I think 6 years or whatever, I have a lot more respect for them because they had a lot of skills and knowledge and abilities that I don't even have yet. And I go, oh, okay. So, but that's why I started a company. That's why I started a bookkeeping firm because that was a huge weakness and a huge button for all business owners. Not all, 98% of them, let's say. There are some that are like, I love bookkeeping. And I'm like, you, sir, are a rarity, but nice to meet you, So but I feel like you have to have a little bit of cockiness or a little bit of like, thinking you're better than everybody else to go start your own company because you don't know the heartbreak and the blood, sweat, and tears and the amount of effort that it actually takes. And if you did know, you might not do it. So you have to have a little bit of cockiness. And people would try to give me advice based on their losses or failures. And I'd be like, whatever, I can do it better. And they're like, you might want to practice listening. But honestly, I'm glad I didn't because if I would have gone into it knowing all of the problems and things that I would run into, I might have been like, no, it sounds too hard. And I already was scared to do it. Like I wanted to do it, but it's scary. And I eventually I was the CFO, I had a few clients, and then eventually I was like, okay, that's it. I got a loan to cover me for a few months and jumped and quit my job. And I was not making that much money. I was probably making, I don't know, 70, 80,000 at the time. I had to basically figure out to cover my expenses. So I took out a small loan to cover me for, a few months. And then I was just like, I got to get clients. I got to get clients. And one of my friends pointed out to me that my pattern was that every time I said I was going to go start my own business, somebody would give me a job offer because I have so much experience and skills and knowledge in the bookkeeping field that it's a very needed field, and business owners want someone in-house to do that for them all the time. It's hard to find someone good. So he was telling me this, and he's like, yeah, your pattern is every time you go, I'm going to go do this. Because I didn't even think about the fact that I had failed businesses, not because they failed, but because I quit doing them because I got a job. And I never considered them failed businesses. It was just like not off the ground yet. So he said this to me and I was like, no, it's not true. It's not going to happen. Literally a few days later, someone reached out to me. They said, hey, we have this big wig that wants an in-house, bookkeeping, accounting person. And we heard you're good. And I'm like, well, I am good. And I was like, but I just started a company and literally you'd have to pay me $150,000 a year for me to even consider it. And he goes, okay, done. And I freaked out. I'd never even heard of seeing that much money before in my life. I curled in a ball, crawled in my bed. I was in this little studio apartment in LA at the time and called all my friends and said, oh my gosh, what should I do? I just got offered $150,000. I'm in debt. I've only ever made maybe $70,000, $80,000 in a year, 70, 80,000 in a year before, and all of my friends were like, you should take it. What are you talking about? Go take it. And I found myself convincing them all why I shouldn't. I was like, I couldn't make that much money in my own company. It might take me a while. It might take me a few years, but I have room to grow. And for this company, even if he gives me a $20,000 bonus in a few years, I'm never going to make more than that, more than that range. And then I was like, okay, if I'm convincing all these people why I shouldn't do it, obviously I know what I want to do. And I had to call him back and say, thank you so much for the offer. It's amazing. I really appreciate it. That was a huge ego boost. But no, I will not be accepting that. Good luck. And it took me a few years to make that much money. My first year in business, I think I made 86,000 or something. And I did almost all the bookkeeping myself. And then I started hiring contractors, whatever it was, so it grew. But for me to take home 150,000 took a few years. I did it now.
That's something I think a lot of business owners don't realize is if there's a big difference between what you make and what you take home, right?
Oh, yeah. Huge difference. So we had, I don't know what people really want to hear or don't want to hear, whatever. But last year I made just over 10 million. 10 million is my goal. I just made over 1 million revenue for 2023. And it was a huge goal and I'm super excited. And it took me 5 years to get there. And like I said, there's other companies who have done it in 1 year and they have investors or they have lots of experience or they have, it's their third company or whatever. And some people never get there at all. When you look at, there's I think 32.4 million small businesses in the US. Don't quote me on that, but about that, 9% of them only have hit 1 million or more revenue. So I'm like, okay, this is amazing. But my company takes almost all of that money. I don't get to take most of it home. My payroll is a majority of that money because this is a service-based business. I don't have high overhead as far as everyone's remote, so there's not an office, but I pay those bookkeepers pretty well. And and then I have to have some admin people. I can't do everything myself anymore. So I'm like, I took home more than 150,000, but not it doesn't, it's not it's revenue is what do they call it? It's your glamour number or whatever.
That's right.
Your profit is a whole different story, but it's cool. I love that I can say I have a successful business. We made over 1 million revenue. Don't ask me how much of it I took home. I tell people, but I'm pretty transparent just because I ask other people to be transparent all day long. I do a sales call and I'm like, great, what was your revenue? And they just have to tell me because I need to know what that's going to take me, how much, how long it's going to take me to do bookkeeping for. So they can't just be like, I don't want to get into it. I'm like, well, you have to tell me. Like, sorry. So usually people just answer me. So if I'm asking other people that all day long, I have to be willing to talk about it, I guess. So, this year my target is 1.5 revenue and hopefully enough profit to do the things that I need to do. But so I'm a successful company. It's awesome. But, I went to Grant Cardone's 10X conference and his business summit and all that. And he's like, great, you hit 1 million, you're still broke. And I was like, I know, I'm still broke. And I thought it was going to be this huge milestone, and it is. I don't want to not acknowledge myself for accomplishing that, but I don't feel rich. I don't feel fancy. Like I'm still driving my Toyota Corolla. It's not like, and maybe other people in other industries that have less employees or less overhead or whatever, maybe $1 million revenue, if they're taking home 60% of it, is great. But that's not where I'm at. So am I successful? Yes. Do I need to be way more successful? Yes. I'm not someone who, I hate being bored. I hate being complacent. I hate being content. I dated a guy one time, a little anecdote, and he was like, aren't you ever happy? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm happy most of the time unless you say something mean to me or don't show up when you say you're going to. And he was like, no. I mean, aren't you ever content? And I was like, hell no. Content is like boredom. I'm never content. And this was a few years ago. So he goes, so when you hit $1 million, you're just going to want another million? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, and he was not into it. And that relationship did not last very long. But yeah, I'm never going to be content. I always want more because whenever I'm content, I'm bored and honestly depressed. An entrepreneur depression is a real thing. And if I hit a goal and I don't have a new goal set up, I am depressed. It's really weird. I don't like it because I would love to be someone who could just be like, I have achieved this big goal and put these, let me rest on my laurels and I'm so amazing and da da da. But I'm not. People are like, wow, you've achieved so much. And I'm like, yeah, I have. But I have big goals. I have so much more I want to do. Thank you. Yes, achieved a lot, but so much more I want to do. And there's so many different types of failures that are learning experiences, like when you have goals that you don't achieve by the time you thought, I wanted to get it done by December and I didn't. And I was really upset. Or we had 1 month that we had 100,000 revenue and it was a huge achievement and it was last summer and I have not repeated it since. And I'm bummed because I don't know. I had to figure out what happened, but it was we finished a huge project and it was really bad economy and clients were closing their businesses. So we lost a few clients and, that's not even, they're like, I love you, closing my business, sorry, bye. And we're like, okay, do better. You hope you come back. Or some of them sold their businesses, whatever. I can't control the universe. I can do the best I can, right? But I'm like, I still have not hit that again. And I was hoping that by Christmas, we'd be at 130,000 revenue months. And that didn't happen. And I was super bummed. But being able to get used to experiencing failures and just using them as a learning experience. And there's so much to learn. There's internal learning, how do I deal with it? How do I deal with it? How do I make my company, how do I make my employees feel when I'm not happy? Am I doing a good job of not taking it out on them because they're all working their asses off? And I've gone through phases. I never yell at them because I never liked getting yelled at as an employee. And I thought it was okay, boomer, you don't yell at people. But, so I don't yell at them, but they can tell if I'm a little short or whatever, or if I'm talking to my executives and I'm like, guys, if we don't make more money, I'm going to have to start laying people off. And I don't want to do that. They're upset. They're stressed out. And at the end of last year, kind of in October, November, we were having some hard months because of all the things that happened. And it was tough. It was really tough. And I had to confront some hard truths of, even though things are tough, it's not okay to be making my employees feel like that. Like if I do have to lay people off, then that is a decision I have to make, and it's a hard decision and it sucks. And I didn't have to do it. And I'm glad I didn't. But we made it through and, but when we made it through, it was when I stopped being upset and not even threatening, but just telling them guys, being stressed out, right? I wasn't trying to threaten them. I was just being stressed out. And when I stopped doing that and I was like, you know what? We're going to figure it out somehow. I need you guys. We're going to stay upbeat about this. We're going to get more clients. You're going to talk to everybody. We're going to outcreate this and we're going to do it with a smile on our faces. And it starts from me. So even experiences like that where I hadn't experienced that before, because up until then we were always pretty much do. And all of a sudden we had a that we're still kind of coming out of. And I've gotten a whole bunch of new clients in the last few months. Sales has been great, but a lot of companies at the end of last year, mid to end of last year, closed their doors. And so they're not clients for us anymore. And that's not great for me. And that failure of not knowing how to emotionally process that, so I didn't bleh all over my employees, was because I'm sure they were not happy with me. And I always want to have my company be somewhere people want to work. So if they're I don't feel like going to work because Maya is bleh all over me, then that's a failure on my part. So I had to really change my mindset. And instead of being about it, I had to be okay, we're going to handle this, guys. We got this. We're awesome. We're an awesome team. Let's do this. And we did, but we didn't until I changed my mindset.
And it's interesting to see how dynamic you are, because you're probably the most energetic bookkeeper that I've ever met.
I probably am. People tell me it's but it's such a great marriage of skills, to be a people person and a communicator and understand bookkeeping and taxes and accounting. Because I did bookkeeping myself. So I can sit quietly behind a computer for hours and just do bookkeeping. But then I can talk about bookkeeping and explain it and money and taxes and, and business owners inherently trust me because I can explain it to them and I have good communication. So it's important, but yeah, also I can talk a lot.
So let's say before we end this episode, if you could give one piece of advice to all the small businesses out there listening, what would you say to them?
One piece of advice to small businesses. I would say keep going. Don't give up. I think it's really hard to be a business owner, an entrepreneur. It's hard to get started. It's hard to take that leap. Most small businesses fail in their first few years in business. Could be because they don't have capital. They don't know how to, they have their skill of why they started the business or their idea, but they don't know how to bring it to fruition. And it's really hard. And obviously sometimes you have to cut your losses and start something else. But if you are passionate about, or you were passionate about it at some point, and you have skills and opportunities, don't give up just because it gets hard. Don't give up because you had a big failure. Maybe you have to pivot, maybe you have to change something, but just keep going because you're doing a hard thing, and take every failure as a learning experience and really analyze it and learn from it. Even if it's like I was saying, internal analyzing it as far as how can I react to this better next time? Because it doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means you'll be more used to it and you'll be able to take it in stride and you won't fall down because of it next time. You'll have a bigger problem. You'll have a different problem, but don't give up because the world needs us. The economy needs us. The people need you. The product or service that you are selling is a product and service, unless you're a scammer. It's a product or service that people need, and it's your responsibility to get in front of those people so you can help them and help them do better in their lives and their businesses. Subscribe because I need 1,000 subscribers because that's my new goal. If you want to not throw your money away, you need a good bookkeeper.